Hello, I'm Neal Romanek, and I'm editor of Feed Magazine. And welcome to our AI Machine Learning Roundtable. We have with us Bill Admans, CEO of Ateliere, Michael Pfitzner, Vice President of CGI, Raoul Cospen, Director of Business Development at Dalet, and Andrew Broadstone, who's Senior Product Manager at Zixi. And these four technology experts are going to tell us about their experience of how AI and machine learning is being used in the broadcast industry and what we might be able to expect from the future and what kind of things we should think about when we're approaching bringing AI, machine learning into our workflows or AI-based tools into our work generally. So thank you very much, guys, for joining us. First question I wanted to put out is, all your companies have been using AI in some way or another for a variety of different purposes. But I just kind of wanted to hear what, when we hear AI, machine learning, it still to a lot of people sounds like something quite abstract, or even still has a bit of a sci-fi edge on it. Are these sort of robots taking over humans' jobs, and they're going to take over the world, and who knows what's going on there, and all those algorithms and stuff. But AI and machine learning are being practically used in the real world, in real tools, by real people at work. And so I wondered if maybe I could just kind of hear from you how you're using AI in your business, and how especially your customers are finding AI powered or enabled, or I'm not even sure what language you give it, kind of AI boosted maybe tools to kind of help them do their work better. Do you want to start, Andrew, and kind of
Sure.
tell us about what's going on at Zixi?
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, just for a little context, Zixi's, customers they're doing a lot of more sort of agile constructions of their video workflows, right? So, and a lot of times we're going from broadcast workflows that might have been entirely sort of controlled and owned by by one company or one set of companies and very well designed, into a much more almost ad hoc construction using public networks, maybe adding partners both on the contribution and distribution side, pretty close to the actual live event, maybe if it's a live broadcast. So needing to put together channels and partnerships in a much more agile way, and doing it with less, right? So you often have a smaller audience for more channels, right? So the economics are different than they used to be for some of these broadcasters. So they really have to figure out how to leverage these public networks, how to leverage equipment that's not all controlled by a single team. And so at Zixi, we are trying to give our broadcast operations customers tools so that they can, first of all, visualize that entire workflow across all the way from the encoder all the way through distribution, and they can manage things like failover in the cloud. And in the context of those kind of workflows that we're helping those teams with, we are using AI and ML in our tool set to give our broadcast operations engineers really two things. One is really looking for patterns that are repeatable, that we see across customers, where we can say, hey, there's a pattern that indicates something's not quite right, that you really ought to think, you ought to look closely at this. So giving you a heads up on failures, and we see that can work. We have, models that are trained with, something like 3 billion data points every day. So we're able to really see across the industry what are the sources of instabilities in these kinds of complex ad hoc workflows, and where are problems coming up. So that's one thing, giving those teams a way to get a little heads up. Think of it as kind of like, hey, it's getting cloudy over here, it may rain, giving you an opportunity to get your umbrella out, get your rain gear going, switch over, right? If you see congestion building up and you see conditions that the machine learning system believes are reasons to be concerned, you can switch over to a different path, for example. Another thing that we really are focused on, and that our customers see a lot of value in, is using our machine learning system for root cause analysis. So one of the things that we've done is use machine learning to identify correlations. It's related to what I was talking about before with the predictive analysis, but also using that same kind of technology to understand the sort of blast radius of an event that has happened, something that's wrong, a failure, and see, okay, what are all the things that were involved? What are all the precursors to this happening? And how can I see this in a single view and understand what I need to do about it, and to do that quickly? And we think that's something that, just having talked to a lot of customers, it's really valuable. We hear our customers talking about, on a per channel basis, hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially every year per channel, just to try to figure out what happened on these failures, especially in these ad hoc workflows where, there isn't somebody who's like, oh, I know that one piece, because they didn't assemble it. They don't have as much runtime, and these things change week to week. Especially if you've got events that are occasional events that occur periodically, and you've got different people in the field and things like that. So those are a couple of big use cases for us where we really see some a lot of value that our customers are getting out of the product, and that's the kind of work we're doing.
So I mean, I really get the sense, and having talked to all of you actually at other points, that we're creating so much content, we're creating so much work for ourselves, that it's kind of beyond the human's ability to sort through it in any efficient, effective way that's gonna make any sense. Bill, do you want to talk about, because I know that that's something Ateliere has been working with, is this being able to deal with these sort of massive amounts of data that that no human is going to be able to sort of sort through in our lifetime.
Yeah, thank you, Neal. Ateliere is a supply chain platform that's being used, as I said earlier, by large studios, networks, content owners. And when we're talking about the volume of assets, we're often talking about petabytes of content and thousands, if not millions, of files. And that's humanly impossible to manage on your own. So we really do use machine learning and AI to manage our content, to orchestrate how that content is being used through the workflow, but and in a very practical sense, also to help our customers really manage the cost of that media in the cloud. And one of the areas where AI plays into that court for us is in the deduplication workflow. A good example of that is where you have many versions of titles building up over time. For example, a typical Netflix order might be 26 different episodes or 26 different versions of a single episode because of all of the different languages that are being ordered. But the reality is that 90% of the frames of that content are identical. So when you add up the size of a video frame being stored over and over again, and we all know how massive video is on storage devices, it becomes very expensive very quickly. And then when you multiply that over thousands, if not tens of thousands of titles in a library, it becomes very, very expensive. So the Ateliere platform actually is designed to really manage how that media is stored. We use a proprietary process called Frame DNA to analyze all of the content. We line all of and we do this also using the IMF format as a container for all of this content, and the CPLs give us the ability to create virtual masters. And what we do is we compare each version. So we save one set of common frames, and then what we do for each version is identify only the differences, and we save those, and then we create a virtual CPL for each one, a content playlist for each version. So the net result of that is that we're often saving over 70% of the storage footprint for our customers, which, when you have a library that represents petabytes of storage, adds up to millions of dollars being saved. And our customers are finding that to be a huge value add. And the ROI on moving into the cloud is very, very quickly realized because of this.
Great. So Michael, we're kind of moving into, I guess something where it's not so much, or maybe it is, but in the news world, you're talking about being able to access things maybe with speed, maybe speed and efficiency are the key things more than dealing with the sheer volume of materials. What have you been doing at CGI and your customers have been doing that is really requiring some of this this AI leverage?
Yeah, I think it's well, that open media is, as a newsroom, as a core competency newsroom system, is all about metadata. It's all about texts and stuff, and we leave this specialty of dealing with assets like video and audio to the specialists from other companies we have in the round here. And this, I have to say, there's a very interesting part in the analysis of video and audio in all aspects is definitely something that's very adventurous, and that's not our part of our world. We then implement the results of these analyses from our integrations with MUM systems and etc. But also on the text side, there's a lot of very good examples. And I would like to maybe go even beyond the scope that we have in here to just make some examples. So, for example, for our software, we integrate semantic search and topic extraction. So, from the sheer volume of agency wires, there must be mechanisms that help you aggregate, or that can help you aggregate a certain cluster around topics, and this is already done by AI. So we can use this functionality to pre-sort and to pre-analyze the incoming sources. There's mechanisms we can use here to also do a fake news detection ahead and give kind of a probability or of a reliability factor alongside with the ingested text or agency that comes. Things like that. Overall, of course, things like speech to text to ease out the work for the journalist, to make it easier to bring text into the system, things like that. And we're working on other parts like text summary, abstract building, keyword extraction. These things, I think they come, if you're working with AI, a lot of these things, if you touch one thing, or if you have one technology analyzing text and content of text, there's tons and tons of possibilities how to then use these results and how to regroup them and how to offer them to the customer to create a big value. And parts of these tasks couldn't really be done by humans. Fake news detection is getting a huge charge with the input that you have. And some are just saving routine. Keyword extraction, summary building is just like convenience, additional features that you can use. And there's so many things. Today we talked about evaluating diversity aspects of broadcasted stories here. The relation, or the share between women being mentioned and men being mentioned, for example, these things, or if you think about other aspects that come into more focus, AI can help to give you this kind of reports and feedbacks, as we talked about, reporting already supported by AI. So I think this is also a very important aspect when it comes to the news production.
Mm. Raoul, do you want to kind of go into that a bit more? Because of course, Dalet has been in news for a long time, and asset management. So kind of going across both of these areas we've been talking about.
Yes, and very often, Dalet offers MAM-based solutions for multiple kind of workflows, including news productions, sports productions, also managing, large media libraries, preparing programs for different kind of platforms. And eventually, we have found that AI helps in a lot in 3 different areas. It helps to produce, to increase productivity and automate some of the tasks. It helps to index any kind of content, being videos, being audio, being pictures, of course. And it saves, indexing time, human indexing time. And it helps also to find content, because we, like Bill was mentioning, like Ateliere, we are also managing libraries of millions of assets.
and it's hard to find potentially content, especially when metadata is not so organized. So we have been also exploring and implementing effectively different kind of solutions and technologies. And speech to text is probably the most common one, because with speech to text you can index content. Obviously, you can index a transcript, but you can also generate captions, and this has been widely adopted by our customers. The fact that you can generate a first version of your captions using a combination of natural language processing and speech to text. But it's not only about generating that first version of the captions, it's the capability to fix it, to improve it, and also to make it compliant, with, for example, the BBC standards. So it's not only about the use of AI, it's about also the tools that you expose to users so they can, make the best of use of, AI technologies. And we have found also some other interesting things, use cases, especially when you have a large amount of content in the archive that you want to index and you want to discover in a way. So face recognition was a typical use for this. I mean, we know a lot of celebrity face recognition, but they don't always work effectively for archives because you've got all materials. So the idea was to analyze the archive and find, some kind of, faces that are popular in your archive, and then start to be able to automatically or manually index them. So those are the kind of uses also that we can make with AI to make your archive more documented, better documented. Also, there is a variety of AI engines that generate a lot of metadata. They can recognize landmarks, objects, and all kind of things. And suddenly you start to ingest so many metadata that end up actually polluting your archive with too many metadata. So this is why we see more and more, and the technology allows it now, some custom-made models for specific things, like I want to recognize these logos because these logos are super important to me. They are sponsor logos, So for my sports activities, these are very important. And so you create that model specifically for these logos, and it's able to say, okay, this is this logo, and it's partially visible, it's blur, it's not blur, such kind of extra metadata data that you need for the editorial aspects. So there are a wide scope of these possible use for AI, for indexing, for also editing. So we know that highlights are more and more automatically created, especially sports highlights. However, that needs also a sports data feed, so it's a combination of both. And there is also new type of technologies like BERT or MP23, those kind of things that are, semantic encoding of data, including text data. So it applies to stories, it applies to audio, it applies to videos, and the idea is to semantically encode these media and then find similarities. So as a journalist, for example, I'm typing a story about this and that, and then the system is actually going to search for things that have similarities on the topic and these kind of things. And that works across multiple languages. And that works also way better than keywords tagging. So this is a new type of technology that really helps to save searching time. So you go, instead of searching for half an hour for a specific topic, it does the same job in like a few seconds, basically. So it's pretty amazing that those new technologies coming out. And what you can do with it effectively.
So it brings me to my next question, actually. And you're talking about that, having that that ability to stick a metadata tag on everything, and which at some point in the past might say, oh, that's a really good idea, until you start to do it and you get this sort of sorcerer's apprentice kind of thing going on. And so I wondered, like, how, when we start using AI, how is that going to change the way we work and the way we approach these things? Because it's almost like we kind of created a problem, or technology created a quality problem to have. You've got a lot of stuff there that you've got to solve, and so you kind of dump it into the AI, and that kind of helps you to sort of sort out some of it. But then now you create a whole new set of problems, or a challenge maybe to the way you're doing things. And so how do kind of people need to change how they're doing things, or how might we adapt our workflows or even business models to kind of start using AI more intelligently, or more maybe collaboratively, like we're sort of collaborating with AI rather than creating a problem and solving it, Does anybody want to jump in on that?
I mean, I guess I have a couple thoughts on that. I mean, one of the things in our space, we're focused a little differently in that we're thinking about the sort of operational workflow and helping the operations teams. That's our primary focus. But one of the real challenges, of course, is you don't want to add more alerts. You don't want to add more like, oh, here, look at this again. The real problem these teams have is they've got too much information, and too often they're sort of shutting it off. Like, okay, there's just, these things are noise and I don't want to hear it. So one of the real big challenges in any of this is sort of like using AI, to help sort that, right? And sort of say, these are important things and these are not important things. And I think one of the things that we are trying to do is get a feedback system going with, so basically engage the user in, I talked a little bit before about sort of root cause analysis. So providing tools that let the user go through the process of seeing what happened and describing, adding metadata to that, adding tags, okay, this is where, maybe there was a problem in the data center that we know about. This is where, Dave spilled coffee or whatever, right? Some external thing, being able to mark that, and then also providing tools that give some kind of a workflow within, a human workflow. Like, okay, I'm going to assign this to someone, and then capturing that information and feeding that back into our model, so we can say this was important, and then we can really help. So by kind of facilitating a human process of engaging with the data, we can extract metadata, we can extract tagging from that experience that helps us train our models to reduce that sort of alert, noise, right? And we can really start to understand, what do the humans actually care about? I think that, I don't know if that quite gets at your question, but I feel like, that changes how people work, and the sort of interaction between the AI and the human workflow. I think it's a real important thing that we think about a lot as a way of learning.
I was saying, I'll tell Michael as well that in news especially, it's kind of what the whole point is, like, what is useful to people, and I guess the difference between sort of data that you might collect and that versus knowledge or information that's useful to the person. So how can maybe journalists, newsrooms and things start directing AI towards what is most useful to them, or what is going to uncover something that is useful? It's almost like, kind of, where do you need to aim AI to kind of get the best fact detection, or the best storytelling, or the best,
Yeah, good question. I mean, if we start looking at our overall lives, I would say, for everybody, what does AI mean? And I think this is very similar to what it obviously means to then also to journalists. And I think the goal is to be able to do more, do it better, do it more effectively. And with the hope you can concentrate on what's important to you, like a recommendation system in any video platform. You don't want to spend time looking around what's new, but you enjoy having good suggestions. And this is exactly what I think AI should be doing. It should be subtle. It should be helping support, like almost unnoticed. The best AI is probably if it's unnoticed, if it's not invading or taking over. This can scare people. So I think the most value we see in tasks that are repetitive, that are annoying, that are not core of the journalist's work. Journalists rightfully see their work as kind of an artistic work. They are artists in words. They have to work very carefully. They have to be very precise. And this is the standards of journalism. So everything that AI is possible is helping here to support. And we heard some good examples here. Speech to text absolutely saves time, is a good method. We have repetitive tasks as keyword extraction, building summaries, making a different text. Came across a use case recently where you can build a search engine optimized text from your original text. It's kind of a repetitive task, and there's pattern, and pattern are good for AI. So why not use AI to build the SEO text from your original text and things like that? So I think, and there's tons. I don't want to just go through a list of possible AI things, but I think the principle here is make it subtle, make it not invasive. Let the people concentrate on their core work, on what they're enjoying, and then you make a better workplace, and then you help people and also adopting. And I think it's inevitable. The AI will be in our private lives. AI will be everywhere. So this is, I think, after generation C, the digital natives, we have the next generation being the native robotic and AIs. So I think this is where we're heading into this. And everything we can do, and this is why we also talk to our clients in such a way that we think, well, think about what is repetitive, or we're observing them and say, we see what is repetitive and make a suggestion. This could be done better by something, but not the journalist. He can use his time much better than spending it on this task. So I think that's how it will. I hope that's how it's going to change the work's life of journalists here.
But I would say you want to stay in control. You don't want the AI to be hidden somewhere and then the AI does it for you. You also want to do it to stay in control and do it kind of manual. And this is why the tools that all of us as suppliers need to be AI compatible, and we need to rethink the way we want to expose AI to users and want to make it user friendly. And one of the key aspects is AI is not necessarily super accurate. So you want it as accurate as possible, but you want to be able to QC also your AI metadata, your AI generated content. So I think it's really a matter of exposing those AI results and give very simple user interfaces to say, yes, I confirm, I don't confirm, or let me suggest that to you. And of course, the feedback into the AI model is going to be super important as well. Let's take a simple example. I find a new face, somebody unknown. This somebody seems important to me, so I'm going to document this somebody, and that needs to feed back into the model. And in a way, you really need to make this simple and transparent for the users. That's the point.
That's interesting about that. Almost like there needs to be some education about AI that, and Bill, maybe you can talk a bit about this too. But that thing of like we create a problem, we can solve it with AI. It's almost like they joke of we'll fix it in post. Pretty soon it will be like, well, we'll fix it in AI. And so how do you need to maybe change thinking or educate people about what they need to do to prepare for when the AI is going to come into the workflow, or to understand what it can do and can't do? I can also imagine working with studios. Studios would be like, oh great, we'll just feed it into the AI, it'll be great, it'll just be fine. Rather than appointing somebody to take responsibility for it.
Yep. An area where AI is becoming very useful for us and for our customers is actually in business intelligence. And business intelligence starts on the platform where we're gathering or storing all of the metadata and all of the results from the AI. But the reality is that there are many, many different systems and processes used throughout the workflow. And the platform becomes sort of like the content hub for exchanging the media and the AI, the information that's being gathered via AI. And so, to your point there, this is where standards start to come into play. whether it's metadata standards that are established internally or industry level standards, and then also standards for data exchange itself, such as BIPL, BEPL, the business, basically the business intelligence process language that we all use to be able to exchange data between platforms, such as in our case with one of the studios that we manage, a large iconic studio. They brought Ateliere in to be the content hub for everything in the studio. All of the content is stored within our platform, and they've built up a massive amount of data around all of the content using the AI within our platform. But then the platform connects to all of their different systems, to their rights management, to their contract systems, to their billing systems, to their ordering systems. And so each of these systems requires different and very precise data. They would not work very well if it was random data that they had to sift through. So this is where the standards come in, and this is where the best practices as well. And so it is a process of machine learning, where you work with your platform, you design your platform to gather certain types of data, to filter out other types of data, so that you have a very precise record that is going to fit your workflow, fit your needs, fit your requirements.
What about, other people want to chime in on the idea of like education around AI and kind of what people, how people might come to better understand what AI is and isn't? I mean, just the fact that we keep saying AI and ML as a sort of blanket term for all kinds of different things.
One thing that I would say is that when we use the term AI, most often we're actually referring to machine learning.
Sure. Yeah.
We've taught the system a very precise set of information. A good example would be object recognition. The machine doesn't have the intelligence necessarily to look at something random and go, oh, this is a mountain, without us first teaching the machine what a mountain looks like. And so it's now just using a series of logic. Face recognition is another area. We teach the system what the faces look like, what that person's biometrics look like. And then it's simply a series of comparative analysis across frames, comparing back to a database of pre-learned faces. So first of all, I think understanding the terms is very important. As manufacturers and as suppliers, we all have a responsibility to be teaching our customers, and that's an important part of the process is when we go to market with products, teaching folks how our products work, what all of these features and functions are, and how they can use them. So, all of the resources that we have for getting information out through the industry, whether it's at events or our own, educational knowledge sharing resources are really important. The other part of it is that, that education is starting earlier and earlier in the process in the universities and colleges as people are being prepared, and AI related classes are now becoming a very important part of engineering and computer science training. So as we start to prepare our next generation of people coming into our industry, they already have a really strong basis and understanding of what AI and machine learning is about. And I think as an industry, we have a responsibility to work with the learning institutions, the universities, the colleges, to help them be able to include the specifics of our industry in that curriculum as well. And then going back again to standards. Standards you really are built around the ability for us to be able to connect all of the various different systems in a workflow so that they work very cleanly together, and that there is interchange between each of them. And so I think this is where the standards bodies really are very important, whether it's the SMPTEs and the ITUs of the world, and being able to develop more and more standards around AI and be able to educate people why these standards are important and how they work so that we can design them into our workflows and have better experiences.
Are you finding that at your companies, that are you talking to other companies about how they're using machine learning and how they're, the idea of a black box sort of comes to mind when you talk about machine learning, and I've got this image in my mind of everybody huddled around a cauldron doing something, and they're not really talking to anybody. But I'm sure there must be a lot of lot of exchange of information and exchange of how you're doing things.
It's really about identifying the use cases and understanding what the value of automating these use cases are. Okay, and it's about also putting some agility in the way we implement AI, because very often, people are thinking, okay, with AI, I'm going to be able to do lots of things like find a specific person who is talking on the phone, and there is a cat behind, and a mountain on the right. This doesn't happen. If you start to do those stupid use cases, then you start to build a gas factory that's never going to work. So it's really about identifying the use cases, the metadata that we want to generate. For example, if it's about indexing, and start simple. This is working effectively. So it's why custom models are more to the point and gives much better results, because also when you're a media organization, you don't want inaccurate metadata, you want accurate metadata. And having accurate metadata needs training. And this is what we can address with custom models, basically.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with Raoul here. I think also it's on us to really find the right use cases and to identify what's not working, to give a heads up to the customer, to avoid misunderstandings about what an AI can do and what it can reasonably not do. And I think there's use cases that just don't work, and maybe there's expectations that AI can do everything. You can replace every human work with AI and it's working the same way or even better, which is not the case. As Bill said, no training, no nothing, no knowledge, no recognition, no result here, and it's always depending on the training of the AI. And some things you have to invest much more in training and still get inaccurate results, and you won't be satisfied. And instead of using people like you used to do, and that's exactly where I think we have we are as vendors are here to support and consult with the customer to tell him, well, this is feasible, this will work, also in regards to change management and the new business models possible maybe, but we also should look after not creating expectations that are just fully irreasonable or we cannot keep.
I think I just want to echo that. I mean, I think in our space, I think that a lot of people can kind of come to it rather naively and sort of think, oh, this, the machine's going to fix everything, and it's sort of magic. And I think it's important for people to have some understanding that sort of garbage in, garbage out still kind of applies, right? You still have to you have to train the system. There have to be actual patterns in the data in order for you to have anything meaningful. And I think focusing on, both of you said, and I guess everyone has said, you have to focus on particular use cases that you're trying to help the user with. And then I think in terms of education, the user has to understand that they have a part to play in working with this system. It's kind of a conversation, at least in our system, right? There's a matter of feedback I was talking about before. And so user has to understand that. They have to understand the limits of what the ML can do, and they have to understand that they have a role to play in helping to train it. And and then we have to make it clear in our product what we can do and what we can't do, where these models apply and where they don't really have a good, they don't really work, or they aren't actually providing we don't want to set expectations with our user that somehow there's a magical thing that's happening here. So,
do you see? I know this isn't necessarily on what your particular businesses are focused on, but Do you see the AI machine learning being used in content creation, and like how can it be used in those insights to actually create content or create new kinds of content, even like, you know, from when you're looking at how you're going to finance something, or, you know, where the money's going to come from, down to actually producing things.
I can start. I can make it really quick. Yeah, thanks for the question. I think for the newsroom and specifically about texting and stories here, that it's our concern. We see in terms of production, automated news picking up. So it's a lot of, and this is not really the creative part for the journalist to, you know, to make a weather announcement or the traffic or things that are, as I said, repetitive and always only something little changes, maybe only the content and the data changes. It's not really that interesting also for journalists to hold this place. So automated news, especially to regionalize news, maybe, or to offer content to regions where it would not be possible just because you cannot have one person for this region to be creating news. This is a very interesting story, and at least in our for our system here to create and to produce, to fully produce with AI. Otherwise, we would leave like serious content, of course, to journalists and their. And I think you're with me, Neal. You don't want your articles to be written by AI fully, but as I said, well, automatic things where no journalist has interest really in doing that, and for specific purposes. This is where I can help a lot to also give more information to people that normally would not have these information. So.
Interesting.
That said, translation is an interesting use case in journalism, I guess. Going from one language to the other, producing a first draft of a translation before the translation is then manually handed over is possibly making some saving. We have been implementing that already for caption translations. I wonder to which extent, you know, journalists would be willing to adopt translation technologies for articles.
I was going to say one area that businesses all like to really do is use data to make informed decisions. And this is where the data that is being gathered by AI can really, really help. I mean, at a macro level, when we're looking at the data that we gather from our CDN, it is helping our content owners really understand what shows they should be producing, what shows they should be acquiring to be able to present to their customers. And being able to fine tune that content really, really helps them maximize their ROI, because they know that the content that they're acquiring is very much in line with what the consumers want. And then on the flip side, on the consumer side, in our CDN, the data that we gather as people watch the content helps define how the next carousel of shows will be presented to that customer, so that over time, more and more of the playlists that you're seeing, you know, on our platform is really fine-tuned to your preferences. So I think your business intelligence is really being benefited by, and the ability to make data-driven decisions is being it benefits from AI.
Great. Well, thanks. We're just about coming up to the end, I think, but I guess just one last question, so quickly or briefly or spontaneously. What do you think this AI and machine learning is going to mean for the industry, say 5 years from now? You know, what can we expect in 5 years? Not too far down the line, but enough that maybe some of the stuff gets mature. What do you expect to see? Or what do you hope to see?
AI is going to be at the core of all our products, like it is at the core of our lives. And we need to be ready for this. We need to put together a relevant product for our customers. So obviously, the research part of things and understanding the user requirements is key, but also finding the right you know, R&D resources for developing those things is going to be a challenge moving ahead, I'm sure.
I think as interoperability between different platforms and AI between the different platforms becomes more standardized, I think we will see AI really connecting all of the disparate parts of the workflow so that it becomes a much more connected, automated, and directed process, as opposed to today many different tools and pieces hobbled together that we have to sort of design around. It's going to be much more intelligent and intuitive, and just things will naturally start to work together, kind of like the Internet of Things does.
I think to that point, just, you know, I see things being much more automated. I think things that are manual today, particularly in the broadcast workflow, that are pretty repetitive tasks that are very manual, trying to figure out what various QoS data means, you know, that kind of stuff should be automated away in 5 years' time. Putting together these workflows should be much easier for teams that, you know, don't need to spend nearly as much time sort of trying to figure out the little minutia, and connecting together disparate systems should be a much easier task. You know, I think machine learning is going to definitely be at the center of these kind of integration workflows and trying to help teams make them work better. And I think, you know, people will expect that. I think that's going to be an expected, you know, way that the tools work. You know, and anything that doesn't do that, I think people will find, you know, very, you know, it just would be, you think about just dealing with spark plugs in your car or something. You don't need to deal with those kind of minutiae, right? You shouldn't have to be exposed to the details, and people will expect that more and more.
Yeah. Going last, what can I say? Everything has been said already, and so I fully agree. It will be at the core of the systems. It will be much more available, like a reliable on-off functionality. Standardization is going to make it easier, and open source project will bring us further. And so AI will be sooner, or very sooner, probably very soon, be much more dominating, or much more within our lives than it is already now. And I think it's a technology coming up. We are able to leverage it already, and we're kind of going with the wave currently and see where it takes us. So it's a really very interesting time to see this really powerful technology pick up. So
great, thank you. I always like to think about the difference between sort of a Renaissance painter having to mix his own paint versus just typing a hex code in. That was great. Thank you very much, Bill, Andrew, Raoul, Michael, and we'll talk to you next time.
thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very
Have a
much.
nice weekend.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Weekend.
Bye-bye.